We're going to start off with making the hot dog buns from scratch here. Right now I've got tap water on the hot, and I'm just letting it get real hot. Right here I have a half a stick of butter. It's not room temperature, it's not melted. It's one of the reasons why I'm making the water hot. Now you can melt it in the microwave if you want to. It's not a big deal. It's all eventually going to end up getting incorporated in this anyway. And one thing that you're going to end up noticing is I'm not going to really be measuring too much of anything inside this, okay? I know most recipes when it comes to baking and stuff, they say do a half a cup, do a quarter cup, do this. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's more about the consistency than it is about exact measurements, okay? So right here we have that half a stick of butter, and I'm going to be putting a little bit more than normal amount of sugar. This is actually about a tablespoon, okay? But that goes inside here. So I put about 3/4 of a cup of water, almost, maybe a cup. Once again, doesn't really matter too much right now. But it's hot water, and just out of the tap, it's not a big deal. And that's going to end up melting some of this butter right now. Putting in a package of yeast, maybe a half a teaspoon of kosher salt. But simply going by consistency. The amount of water that's inside there, I can tell I'm going to need at least equal amount of flour, at least. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put some all-purpose flour inside here. And if you want whole wheat, you could put whole wheat in here. The only difference is the whole wheat takes a little bit longer to knead, and it proves a little bit different. But I'm going to start off with that much all-purpose flour. Okay. Lock it in place and let's give it a stir. What we're looking for is a dough that is semi-sticky. Now what we have here is the equivalent of almost like a pancake batter. That would be considered very runny and very sticky. That is no good. The little bit of butter that's still in there is eventually going to end up getting incorporated, so you don't have to worry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up adding a little bit more flour to this before this gets completely incorporated. I'm going to be adding an egg to this. You could add the egg at the beginning. It's not going to hurt either way. A lot of times when you're making breads and stuff, you'll mix all of the wet ingredients at once, and then you'll mix all the dry, and then you put them together. This is going to incorporate, so no worries. Hakuna Matata. Okay, now looking at this, I can tell it doesn't have enough flour, okay? It probably needs about maybe about 4 tablespoons more flour, okay? Because we definitely have something that's very sticky, but it is starting to kind of come together. So I'm going to end up putting maybe something like that at first. Lock it in. Let's do some mixing and see if we can get this to where it's not a super hard ball. We don't want a super hard ball. We want something that is ever so slightly sticky. So let's see where we're at as far as the stickiness. Do you see how it kind of sticks to your fingers a little bit, but it doesn't? That's what we're looking for, okay? And the side of the bowl has got just a little bit of stuff sticking, but not a whole lot. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and knead this for about 8 minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and see what we got here. Just kind of pull it off this hook. Comes off the hook nice and easy. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay. It's got some elasticity to it. You see how I can kind of pull it and it doesn't break? I mean, that's pretty good. If you can see, it kind of wants to stick to my hand, but it doesn't. Okay, this dough is actually just a little dry, and when I say just a little dry, we're talking maybe not even half of a tablespoon of water difference. Okay, but this is going to end up working for what we are going to be doing with it. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of pulling it to one side here, and I'm going to spray the inside of this with some non-stick spray. Okay, so take some saran wrap. You can also use a towel, whatever. But what we want to do, cover that up so it doesn't dry out and critters can't crawl in there. And we are going to let this do what is known as proving or proofing. It's going to end up taking probably like an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Just depends on how old the yeast is, how much yeast you ended up putting in there, the temperature, and all sorts of stuff, okay? But when this doubles in size or more, we're going to come back in, we're going to punch it down, we're going to shape it, and then we're going to let it prove one more time before we put it in the oven. Okay, so if we look at this, we can see that it has been ballooning up. Okay, so what we're going to be doing now is what's known as knocking it down. We're going to take it out and we're going to throw it somewhere that we can work the dough. So during the time that I am putting these on the baking sheet, I'm only keeping them about an inch away from one another, so that way when they start proving, or proofing, whatever you want to call it, they can't expand too far sideways. So in other words, I want to keep these guys at a size that is acceptable for a hot dog bun and not a sandwich roll. Okay, so that's pretty much what I am trying to accomplish here. I'm going to be using the measuring tool, which is the knife. Okay, that's good. Okay, so judging by the way that these guys are proving right now, or proofing, whatever you want to call it, it's going to take maybe another 20 minutes. All depends on the temperature and how old the yeast is and stuff like that. Okay, but essentially we have some that's going to end up working for us. It looks like these two are probably going to be most ideal, but we'll see what happens here in just a little bit. So these guys have been proofing up a little bit here for a while. You can see that they're touching each other. This obviously is proved up more than this. What are you going to do? We got the oven set to 400 degrees. If you want these to be sesame seed, take an egg, mix a little bit of milk with it, mix it up real good, and then just kind of go over the top with it, a thin coat, sprinkle sesame seeds. That's all you got to do, okay? If you want the top to be a little bit more brown, same thing, a little bit of milk, a little bit of egg, mix them up, go over the top, boom, you're good to go. But these are going to end up going into a 400-degree oven. And you want to give it somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, okay? You'll know because they're going to look done, okay? And at any time, if it looks like they're starting to burn, you got a problem. So let's go ahead and throw these guys in. So as you guys know, I like Marilyn Monroe, and I'm always interested in people from the past, the things that they eat and whatnot, what their diet was like, especially if the person is fit, you know, or they were overweight or whatever. You know, it's kind of like, it's always like you look at their diet and you're like, oh, you know, sometimes if the person is insane, you look at their diet and you're like, well, you need to avoid those foods, you know, that type of stuff. But we are making hot dogs, and while she was in New York, and she liked New York, you know, hot dogs were readily available there on the street. There's actually photographs of her eating hot dogs. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a hot dog that is somewhat of what you would consider New York style. And of course, this will be in honor of Marilyn there, of course, you know. I have to admit, I am more of a chili dog type of guy. I am more of a Chicago dog kind of guy. But, you know, to each their own. You know, they got different types of hot dogs all over the United States. You know, depending on where you go, there's going to be a different way that they serve them. If you're in the South, they're going to serve them different than they do in LA. Okay, so. But we have enough yellow onion here that this I can wrap up and use for something else. Hot dog buns are very close to being done, but we can kind of move this stuff over here to the side. Let's make a little bit of the tomato and onion sauce that is pretty typical, really, of New York hot dogs. I am going to be doing this a little different because typically you'd probably end up seeing them just use ketchup and tomato paste and things like that. But I'm going to end up making my own version of the tomato onion sauce. So what I'm doing now, obviously, is I'm taking a small tomato, cutting it up, so that way we end up actually having a little bit of pieces of tomato. Those that have been following me for a while know that my wife likes tomatoes, so this is kind of for her. So got the buns out. We're going to let these guys cool off. Now I had just got done cooking myself a hamburger patty. So this is the fat from it. Let's go ahead and use that. We also have some meat flavor in there. So our onions in. Now to that, we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt. We don't need to add too much. We're going to end up adding some ground black pepper. Probably good. We're going to end up adding a little bit of paprika to this. We don't need a whole lot because we're just making a small amount here, but that's enough right there. Our tomatoes. A little bit of garlic. To give myself a little bit of the sweetness that I'm looking for, as well as some of the mustard flavor I'm looking for, I'm going to be putting in a little bit of honey mustard, a couple capfuls apple cider vinegar. This already smells pretty incredible, actually. You can add more sugar to this if you want. Also, if you end up using white onions instead of yellow onions, it'll be sweeter as well. Give ourselves a little bit of ketchup here. But yeah, there's sweetness in ketchup. There's that vinegar in ketchup. You know, I mean, this smells really good in here, by the way. I just want this to kind of thicken up on its own by reducing, by basically getting rid of some of the moisture, just simply by cooking it like we're doing here. And it'll end up becoming a lot thicker. I'm turning the heat off now because I honestly think that this is going to be fine. There's enough residual heat here to even take more of it out. Okay, but at this point we could taste it for sweetness, saltiness, pepper, you name it. When it comes to the cooking of the hot dogs, there's basically three popular opinions on how it should be done, and one of them is dirty water technique or whatever, and that's just basically you boil the hot dogs. You just boil them, and then that's how you heat them up and cook them. Then you have people that say you should fry them or you should griddle them, you know, and that's fine. And then there's people that say you should grill them. Okay, I think in this particular case I'm just going to end up doing the dirty water, which it's not really dirty water. But you know, when you start boiling a whole bunch of different stuff inside there, all these fats and all these seasonings and stuff get into the water, it becomes cloudy. But it does impart a flavor onto everything that goes inside there. And I'm not going to be deep boiling them. I'm just going to end up taking the stuff that's in here out, putting some water in here, enough to cover up the hot dogs, and then heat them up until they're warm. So in this particular case, I'm going to be using some Nathan's beef ranks. There's some juice inside here. I'm going to pour it inside here. I've got some water inside here, inside of a pan where I had cooked a hamburger patty, and so it's making my dirty water. Okay, so but this is how we're going to end up cooking these hot dogs. So this one is going to be more like our Chicago dog, okay, and then we're going to do one that's more New York style. So with the New York style, we're just going to grab another bun. I think I'm going to end up going this side, and maybe cutting like that, calling that good for the New York side. On the Chicago style here, if you want to call it that, I'm going to be putting a little bit of Longhorn. Now on both of them, I'm going to put a little bit of mustard. Over here on this side, we're going to end up putting a little bit of white onion, okay? And you want to use white onion because white onion is sweeter. It's not as harsh as a yellow onion, okay? So anytime you're making sandwiches, really, or burgers, or hot dogs, like in this case, I always recommend using white onions. A little bit of ketchup in both. And throw a hot dog in both here. So on the Chicago style, I'm going to take a little tomato, throw it in here, down both sides. I'll take some of those onions, that inside there. The other side I'm going to eat. This side I'm actually going to sneak a little onion in there, but don't tell nobody. A lot of times with like a Chicago style, they'll end up putting like some type of pepper with it too, like a chili pepper. Sometimes they'll put mayonnaise. The problem is my wife doesn't like mayonnaise, so I'm not going to put it on there. New York style, we're going to take our onions and tomato sauce. We're going to put that on here. I gotta tell you, I'm still a chili dog type of guy. And then we've got some sauerkraut. I'm also going to end up putting just a little bit more cheese on the Chicago dog. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hot dogs under the broiler to melt that cheese real fast. There we go. Man, that smells really good in here. Man, that smells really good. So there you go, guys. A version of a Chicago dog, even though, and I'm going to be the first to tell you, ketchup you don't usually put on a Chicago dog. Okay, that's the first. Second, sometimes I'll end up putting some type of celery seed or celery salt, something like that on there. Sometimes I'll have poppy seeds or something along those lines too. And they almost always have some type of hot pepper. But no hot peppers today, a little bit of ketchup. So yeah, I might have broke a cardinal rule right there. And then we end up having our New York dog. And then of course New York, we got our mustard, we got our ketchup. We end up having our red onion sauce, which is a tomato sauce with the onion. And we also end up having our sauerkraut with that. Once again, there's going to be some people who are hardcore going to say, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. Well, you know something? This is the way I'm doing it. And both of these are good dogs. Alright? There ain't nothing wrong with either one of these. But anyway, guys, that is that. Until next time, talk to you later.